Heyo, welcome back to the Undrafted and Unqualified Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Anthony here with Vinny, and we have officially completed a full year of podcasts. We are on
Wow.
like I think episode 52. So we did almost like the equivalent of one a week. I know during the summer we had more last year. But we've done it. So we are back and doing this year's version of our first ever podcast, which is just draft talk, and we're going to be going over the rookies at each position, talking about it, having some fun with that, and we'll be going through it. I mean, I'll just start by saying this was a terrible draft class, and this was a awful landing spots, and I don't think it's crazy to be pissed off about it. The rookie drafts, it's like you better hope you have like one of the first four picks, and that's about it. Maybe five, if you include a quarterback in there. But other than that, it's rough. I mean, we're gonna specifically tailor it to this year, but we'll also add in a couple pieces of dynasty if we're like, hey, give it a year or two, we'll add that in as well.
Mhm.
But as for the draft itself, Vinny, I'm curious what you thought of the Packers as a Packers fan. If you were to give it a letter grade, what do you think you would give the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one to judge just because of the fact that, of course, they traded their first round pick this year for as a part of the Micah Parsons trade. And I mean, for me, if you don't have a first round pick, it's really hard to get into the draft for my team. It's like, all right, what am I going to wait till the second round? I was more watching for fantasy purposes this year, but looking around, I mean, they focus more on defense, address some holes at the cornerback position in the secondary as well, safety. So, um, you know, they do draft well for the most part. They've drafted a lot of homegrown talent that's turned out to be good. So I trust it. I really, I mean, I guess a B. Like there was no names. Like I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know these fifth, sixth, seventh rounders by like their play style stuff like that. But I trust them. They draft well, and didn't have a first, so not much to be excited about. But I don't know. What about for the Pats? What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I like the Brandon Cisse pick for the Packers. I think
Okay.
that's, cornerback, rumored he could go back end of the first. So I think that's a great pick, position of need, as you said. Pats, it was boring. Truthfully, it was pretty boring, but,
Yeah.
getting some guys, one of them they reached on like crazy, but, other than that, I think it was fine. I'll give him like a B minus, nothing crazy, but, with the draft, wait and see. If you were a fan of a team that you did not like their draft, just be patient. We all saw when Josh Allen got drafted and Bills fans were losing their mind, not happy with the pick, and now look at it, right? And the inverse is look at what the Cardinals were doing with Josh Rosen. Like the Cardinals fans were hyped and he was terrible. So you never know until they get on the field. So we can make these grades, we can say all we want now, and we'll never really know until they actually play. Um, we're just going to do the quarterbacks and running backs today. And we're going to start with quarterbacks. We're going to kind of go down the list. I didn't put every single player from each position that we'll talk about in these next two episodes in, simply because some of them are just kind of irrelevant. For example, quarterback position, the Patriots took Baron Morton, the Texas Tech QB, I believe, and he's not going to have any relevance to fantasy football as a seventh rounder, one, and two, he's playing behind Drake May, who was the runner up for MVP last year. So there's some guys we're leaving out. I tried to put names that we might know, players that could have relevance, draft capital, all those things factored in. There will be some names left out though. So just so if you're like, hey, my team took this guy, that we might not talk about him if it was like really late and kind of irrelevant. Um, with that said, too, Vinny and I do have some polarizing opinions on players, so those will be fun to talk about. We haven't had conversations about these players yet, so this is going to be like fresh talk for us too, fresh conversation. So you're going to be witnessing it with us. Probably some rants along the way, but should be a very fun episode. I don't know if you want to add anything or if we should just hop right into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to touch on the point of you saying like don't be disappointed by your team's draft yet. I just also to echo what you said at the start, like it might be okay in this with this draft because of the fact of how thin it was. A lot of surprises, I would say, but it also didn't feel like a surprise because people weren't taking over some other great talent. Like there just wasn't a lot of talent there. Like when you think of like how spoiled the drafts have been these past few years in like terms of offense, especially. But yeah, it's still like you said, there's gonna be diamonds in the rough. There's gonna be guys that outproduce where they were drafted, come out of nowhere, So it's early, but at the same time, this draft class was pretty rough overall to just watch. I really didn't feel entertained like seeing these names come off the board.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, so we're gonna go through like kind of in order of where they were drafted, but Vinny and I also put down guys we love and guys we don't. So kind of like guys we're up on because of the landing spot, maybe draft capital, and guys we're down on, similar to last year. So we'll have fun talking about those guys when we get to them as well. So let's just start it off with the quarterback position. We're starting with the 101, the first pick of the draft, Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders. This is one of the guys I like, okay? This is one of my pluses for the quarterback position. I think it's just very simple, right? He's been compared to Kirk Cousins. We alluded to it last week. And also, this was one of the guys we had hoped for in last week's episode, and it's happened. But yeah, very simple. We all expected it. He's been talked about as compared to Kirk Cousins. I think there's not much to it. We don't know when he'll start. It sounds like it might be open competition now for who will start week one. Mendoza could win the job right away, but I think for the pass catchers, it's not a bad for whoever's starting. I think Bowers will be fine. They didn't go and get a wide receiver, so that doesn't help Mendoza's case. But I think they'll be fine. Like they spent a little money on Jalen Naylor, who they seem to like. They have Trey Tucker there. They have Ashton Genty. They spent on offensive line. I think Mendoza's in a great situation. Kubiak's a great coach. I just like the situation. I like the landing spot. I think the Raiders will be better this year. Not much more to add to that, honestly. I think, but for rookie quarterbacks, I do want to be patient. I won't be drafting Mendoza anywhere. Love the spot for future, like in Dynasty, should be the QB1 off the board, but I probably won't be looking at him in redraft at all.
Yeah, and I also think that's mostly to do with the fact that he has no real rushing upside. And like especially as a rookie, that's super important. We've seen it with guys like Jaden Daniels, who like go out and make an impact right away, mostly because of the rushing ability. So not to say Mendoza like won't have a great good year, but in terms of fantasy relevance, I completely agree that like he's pretty much stay away from unless he's out there doing it all with his arm and putting up monster games. But yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting one because I agree. I like the landing spot. It was one we knew about for a while, as you mentioned. But I think it's interesting when like comparing draft classes. If he was a part of the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May draft class, I think we're looking at this a lot differently, where it's like maybe we're not loving the pick because he definitely wouldn't have been the number one pick. I mean, even last year with Cam Ward, um, who knows? Like, I know there's people go back and forth that they're probably similar levels of like profile going into the draft, but yeah, def echo all the reasons you said of like it seems like a good situation that he's going into which you can't always say when you're the number one pick off the board at QB. So that's definitely the best selling point for me to like this pick a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, as you said, I think very solid prospect, but he's not like generational by any means.
Yeah. Yep.
The next quarterback off the board goes at pick 13 in the first round. Ty Simpson to the Rams. Kind of a shocker. Vinny, go ahead and start us off there.
Yeah, so the way we kind of handled this is we put like our initials next with a plus or minus. And so to preface I kind of had how I handled the Ty Simpson pick, I put a plus. I like the pick, but also in parentheses I said if it was any other team besides the Rams, this would be a minus. And I do mean that because the real reason I do kind of like this landing spot in like the profile, the outlook, future outlook for Ty Simpson is because of the Rams. I think I just trust that McVay or Les Snead had some sort of vision where they're usually not wrong. A lot of like their offenses are very good. Even the Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford trade, I think at the time people were like, Stafford, like, does he still? Then they go and win a Super Bowl. Stafford's still having MVP years. So I think they evaluate talent at an elite level and one of the best organizations to do it. Of course, we saw Puka Nacua, the fifth, sixth rounder, turn into what he is now. It's just wild. So, um, obviously, he's going to sit here. He has no fantasy relevance in the near future or next year, even the next couple years. But I do kind of like the landing spot that feels sort of like a dream for Ty Simpson himself to go to a team like that instead of the dysfunctional teams like the Browns, Jets, or Cardinals, where they clearly have a development problem. So that's what I wanted to preface that. Like, I definitely like the landing spot, but solely because of the team, not necessarily the player of Ty Simpson.
Yeah, it's more so for the player himself, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think for the Rams, this was an awful pick. Like, just straight up, like you could have gotten a guy who's going to help you now, and it's a championship contending team, and that's why I think this is a terrible pick. Could Ty Simpson be all right in this, the system as you mentioned? Like the Rams have a great system in developing quarterbacks. 3 years, 2 years. I mean, maybe it's only 1 year and Matthew Stafford retires, but we have to wait. And to spend your first round 13th overall pick when there are some really good players on the board, I hate it for the Rams specifically. But as you
Yeah.
said, like for Ty Simpson, not bad. In terms of like, obviously ignore him for redraft entirely this year. In terms of dynasty though, like, is he gonna be your QB2 or are you gonna maybe go somebody else who, you know, without naming names, like, do you think you might have somebody higher for QB2?
I don't think so. And he honestly is sort of like a in on my more so rebuilding teams that I have in Dynasty is kind of a target because I think people are gonna sleep on the fact that like you have to wait 2 years. It reminds me a little bit of what I did. I went out and tried to get JJ McCarthy in the draft. Obviously, that hasn't really panned out, but I think that's all about timing where I drafted him. I went out, I gave up assets to go get him and then traded him in the anticipation of him starting, and it got a good return for him. So I'd like to think that's a similar situation with Ty Simpson, which I'm going to try and do. But I also think it could work out even better than JJ McCarthy potentially, just because of like McVay and that sort of situation he could be in. But I completely agree that like in terms of the outlook right now, I have no idea why they felt the need to trade up. Like I don't know what they were hearing of like who was going to take him there, but yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like an absolute reach.
Yeah, I don't play Dynasty, but he definitely feels like I wouldn't want to spend a first rounder on him. Like I'd wait till the second.
Yeah, I think just the weakness of the class this year that we've been talking about, like
Yeah.
he's going to be a back end of the first, which is crazy. I would try and move the pick if I was in that situation, but yeah, it's just so weak of a class that he'll probably sneak into the first.
Trade all your third round picks for Fab. Uh,
Hey, no, I was I was smart and I traded all my picks to go in for this season or this past season. So I'm not stressing that I don't have many picks this year in this draft.
all right, nice. Moving along, the third quarterback off the board at the third round, first pick, Carson Beck to the Cardinals. Neither one of us is like a huge fan or dislikes this pick, so we'll keep this one brief. I think it could work out, right? You spend a day two capital, like the first pick in the third round. It's kind of a wide open room right now with Jacoby Brissett, who wants starter money. He's like kind of holding out because he was named the starter. So you have that situation with Brissett. Minshew is the other guy, and Minshew's very beatable. Like, so I think if it pans out for Carson Beck, like if somehow he wins the job, I think it's a fine landing spot. I mean, we talked last week about what it would be like if Ty Simpson landed with the Cardinals. There's a lot of weapons there. They drafted Jeremiah Love, who we'll get to later. Like
Yeah.
this is a loaded offense. So I think it could be really good if Carson Beck wins the job. Probably, I mean, with all these quarterbacks, I'm probably avoiding for this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it somehow does work out for Beck. I'm not a huge fan of the player himself.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only thing I'd add is like I'm sure the Cardinals are sitting pretty with how things kind of panned out for them. Like we talked about Ty Simpson to the Cardinals in the second round. Maybe they were the team that traded up for him, but you get your guy in Jeremiah Love in the first. I don't know exactly who their second round pick was, but then
Fine.
I mean I know people had Simpson and Beck kind of flip flopped. Like it wasn't like a concrete, Simpson was two on everyone's board. I think that was definitely the majority, but all right, you get the third best guy on most people's eyes in the third round. And so, like you said, it's a good like shot to throw another guy on the roster and see if something pans out.
Yeah, their second rounder, they went guards. So, trying to really load up this offense.
Yeah.
Um, the next name up, also in the third round, pick 12, Drew Aller to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the second and only other quarterback I really like here. I genuinely think Drew Aller could come away as the starting quarterback because there is nobody. Like Brissett, like fighting for Brissett is harder to do than fighting over Will Howard. So, like this Steelers position, like there's just about nobody. I doubt Rodgers comes back. Rodgers just wasn't good, so I mean Aller would have to beat him out though, just because of name alone. But the situation's great. Like it's a solid team. You have two solid running backs, a solid O line. They drafted one who they fucked up the draft pick. Excuse my language, but they really messed up the draft pick because they were on the phone with Makai Lemon, and then the Eagles trade up above them and take him. So they hit the panic button, took an O lineman a little earlier than he probably could have gone, but that's an O lineman nonetheless. Then you have Michael Pittman, you have DK Metcalf. They drafted another receiver in the second. They have still some tight end. Like it's a good offense. You have a good defense behind you. I think this could be a great situation. I do think Drew Aller is good enough to win the job, and the draft capital in a day two pick, it's there. So I think I really like this landing spot for Aller. I think the capital also says a lot. So I'm a big fan of this one. Is he the best player in the world? No, we know this class is not the best ever, but in the right situation, he could develop kind of similar to Carson Beck in this situation. I just really like this spot a little bit more with everything around him.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you in terms of like outlook and potential at the position and like potential to maybe play day one. Like it's all there for him, but it's just really hard for me to even at the Carson Beck pick, it's really hard for me to get behind any of the guys besides Mendoza and Ty Simpson to have any sort of impact on like an NFL team. It just like this quarterback class was horrendous. Like there's just really no other way to put it. But like you mentioned, in terms of like weapons available, the opportunity to potentially win the job, like his only competition right now being Will Howard, as you mentioned. So, um,
Oh, and
yeah, like
Mason Rudolph.
in Rudolph, who I didn't even realize was still on the Steelers. I
Yeah.
thought like, but yeah, I mean it's there, but it's just still so hard to get behind these guys really turning into anything. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think the spot itself could have some potential.
Yeah, as we said, we're not targeting any of these guys, by the way. Like, not
Yeah.
not at all. Like, ignore them for redraft. I think, talking about dynasty though, I think Aller would be my QB too, because I think he has the best shot to start.
Mm,
And he's in a good situation. I also just don't think Ty Simpson is that much better than Aller. I think Mendoza's the best, and then, after that, I just don't think these guys are all that good. But I am a fan of Aller, and I think if he starts day one, I think he'll have more value than Ty Simpson even in the long run. So
yeah.
I'm in on that. Him as my QB2 for Dynasty, but again, I don't play Dynasty. I'm not a Dynasty guru, but
We got we got to get
that's
you
just the way I would go with it.
we got to get you into Dynasty. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've heard it is. I need to find an actual league if I were to play it though.
Yeah.
Um, Next, QB off the board, fourth round, 10th pick, Cade Klubnik to the Jets. Vinny, go ahead with this one.
Yeah, so I put a minus down on this one, and I'll be honest, like there's really not much insight I have to be like, oh, Cade Klubnik's not gonna do this, this, and that. It's really just because of the team. The Jets are just a dumpster fire. We can't get on them for taking this guy in the fourth round, as we mentioned, pretty weak class overall, and it definitely is a position of need. But I just feel for Cade. Like, I just don't see his career going anywhere here, especially with it being the Jets. So that's really all there is with that. Like it's just the team itself. There's no hope in my mind.
I agree, and I think even just from day two to day three, it's very different. And I would also just say, like, real quick, if Klubnik and Aller switch draft spots and, the teams with that, like, all of a sudden we're talking about Klubnik being in a good spot and Aller in a
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
spot. So it's very much draft capital in this with the team itself. I completely agree with you there. I think that's a great spot to put a minus. In the fifth round, the 38th pick of the fifth round, so late fifth, Cole Payton, North Dakota State QB, goes to the Eagles. Not much to talk about here. He's purely a backup. I think it could be fine. I forget who their backup was last year. Tanner McKee.
Tanner McKee.
I mean, he's
Yep.
fine. So Peyton could be the third string quarterback. I think he could work his way up to the two, be a fine backup, but nothing for fantasy. Don't see anything for fantasy in the future either, to be honest.
Yeah. No, nothing else to add there. I think that's just going to be the case with these next few names we talk about. Although the one in the seventh is an interesting one, interesting
Yeah.
kind of story. But we'll get there.
Yeah, the sixth round first pick, Taylon Green to the Browns. He was the Arkansas quarterback. He's an interesting name, right? He's got like that rushing ability, and he's kind of a dynamic player. I think he could be a lot of fun, week 18 fantasy football. But it just came out today too, where it's like Deshaun Watson looks like he's going to be the starter for the Browns. Then they still
Yeah.
have Shedeur Sanders. They're saying they're not trading Dylan Gabriel. Horrible franchise, bad draft capital. This is nothing here. I just think it's an interesting name, and if for whatever reason he were to somehow come away with the starting job, they really built a nice receiving core in this draft, and they have a solid team. Honestly, like the Browns are not a bad team, like on paper. It's just the organization that's the problem. So if somehow he were to come away, it's just a name I want to just mention for that pure reason. But I'm writing him off. I doubt he just gets the opportunity, to be honest.
Yeah, again, just the same in the similar same boat as the Jets, where they nothing they do seems to be right. So, especially at the quarterback positions for both of those teams. So, yeah,
Agreed. Lastly, seventh round, 33rd pick, very late in the draft entirely. Garrett Nussmeier to the Chiefs. He was my minus at this position. I'm down on it simply because he could have been the QB3 off the board, and he goes in the late seventh, nearly undrafted. And he goes to the Chiefs, where he is immediately the third string QB. Like he's not going to be fighting for the second spot, in my opinion, because Justin Fields is there, and I think he's very capable. Um, it's unfortunate, right? Again, if Nussmeier landed with the Cardinals or Nussmeier landed with the Steelers in that day two picks, all of a sudden we're talking pretty highly about Nussmeier. But the way the draft fell and the NFL kind of wrote him off, they don't like him. I'm just it kind of sucks. It's a minus for me. It's landing spot, draft capital, everything involved. So tough situation for him.
yeah, and I think it'd have to do with injury, because I know prospect wise, a lot of people had him in that similar range of like with back club, like just that kind of range. It was kind of a dart throws at that point of like who had who where. So it was kind of a story that people were following as the draft continued, where like, when is he going to go? And so I think if you're going to get taken by a team, the Chiefs is a good one to get taken by. But again, like you mentioned, Fields seemed to be brought in there to be kind of that bridge. Well, if Mahomes isn't ready, or when like those few weeks that Mahomes needs to get back into game ready shape. But yeah, third string on the roster, but not a bad landing spot for him, the player specifically. But it's tough as a seventh round pick to project anything good.
Yeah. So, Mendoza, you like it. Beck and Aller may be able to work their way in. Ty Simpson for the future. Other than that, the quarterbacks are pretty uninteresting. And for redraft this year, I would avoid all rookie quarterbacks.
Yes.
So that's kind of the way we're rolling with that. Let's get into the running backs here. Um, so this running back class was bad. We knew it was bad going in to the draft, and the NFL proved it with the running backs where they were taken and all of that. So, like I mentioned the name Jonah Coleman, who we will get to, but he was a day 3 pick as the fourth running back off the board in this entire draft. Like it wasn't great. There is some good we'll talk about, obviously, but yeah, I mean, bad draft class, and we'll get to each one, but I don't think there's going to be a lot to like out of this class entirely. Start though, we'll go with Jeremiah Love, the third overall pick to the Cardinals. Both of us are big on him. I'll let you start this one, Vinny. Why do you love this spot for him?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily the spot. I think it's the capital, which like we've kind of hinted at with a lot, especially with running back matters a lot. When we talked about like our preview of where we'd like to see guys go, it was capital that mattered the most. And I think it was a little bit of a shock. Of course, there were rumors, whispers of like maybe the Cardinals will take him, and they did. I think that wasn't the most ideal landing spot in terms of his immediate fantasy impact. But the fact that like a team is willing to take him at 3 overall, that's a massive investment into your team. Not only money wise, but just like positionally, you need to get this guy involved. And so it's clear that they should. The Cardinals are also in that kind of boat of dysfunctional, like haven't been great in a while, but it's clear. I would hope they have some sort of plan to use this guy immediately. And of course, there's kind of like the log jam of James Conner still being there, Trey Benson still being there. I'm missing one more name that I
Algier.
Algier, who just signed there this offseason. And, I think I've heard rumors or I've seen reports that he's upset that a little bit that he came there to be the guy and they take Jeremiah Love with the third overall pick. But just based off the capital, I think you have to throw all those other guys to the side. Like this is Jeremiah Love's room now. You don't take a guy 3 overall to have him sit behind Tyler Algier. So, well, they did that with Bijan a little bit, but I think I just like the capital, I'll say.
Yeah, this is a workhorse. Love the spot. I just think, third overall, you're now paying this running back who's never touched the field the highest
Yeah.
AAV of any running back in NFL history.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. He's going to get a lot of money. He has to hit the field. And I think that says a lot, right? Sucks for Algier. Algier is going to be the backup. I think there's maybe Benson or Connor gets cut. The other one's kind of that third, like random, like whatever. They restructured Connor's contract, so maybe he stays and they cut Benson. I don't know what they're gonna do. I doubt all four make the roster. Maybe they even cut Algier, just to save that capital. They spent 12 million in 2 years on him. I don't know what they do, but I doubt all four make the roster. Regardless, we're looking at who's the RB2. Love is the RB1. Will get a ton of work. We've talked about this offense being good before, so I think it's going to be exciting for fantasy football. And honestly, he probably will be drafted as an overall top 12 running back. And I think that is totally fine.
I think for sure. And I think if maybe he goes to the Giants or the Commanders, where he's definitely inside the top 10 and we're maybe even jumping to top 5, like right off the bat, kind of that Genty status. But to go off your point of like this depth of the running back room that the Cardinals have, but also other teams who have really bought into committees, maybe we start to see some trades or like guys getting cut, like you mentioned, that now open up running back positions of guys that are already in the league because it was clear that as we'll get to that the league didn't really believe in this class as a whole and showed it with the capital that they spent on running backs. So maybe a guy like Benson does get traded, like you mentioned, that because he does still hold some value. He's a second rounder from 2, 3 years ago, and at this point. So, yeah, it should be interesting. I think we will see some of that go down in the next, couple months.
Yeah, yeah. And if any of these guys just get cut, like take a look at where they land, depending
Yeah.
on opportunity. Um, the next guy up, I love this spot, honestly, when all said and done. The first round, 32nd pick, Jadarian Price to the Seahawks. I'm big on this simply because there was a fall off afterwards and because they
Mhm.
spent a first round pick on him. Like we said last week, whoever goes as the RB2 and based on capital, it will be big. I wasn't the biggest price guy like going into the draft, but with the draft capital, like they spent that pick on him. He will likely be the guy, and even when Charbonnet comes back, I think he could still be the guy. Like he's walking into a great opportunity here. I think Emmanuel Wilson, maybe they do a little bit of splitting, but I still think it could be like 65-35 in Price's favor. I think this is a great situation, great landing spot, great draft capital. You got to be excited about Price. I think these two guys really they bring a lot of excitement for fantasy. If I were to ballpark it for redraft, where could Price go? Maybe like a back end top 24 type situation. I think that could just off rip that feels okay. So I think it could be exciting if you could get him as an RB3, like even better. But a back end RB2 honestly feels okay with how the draft went and where they took him.
No, yeah, I think just to, emphasize two of the points you pointed out, we talked about capital with Jeremiah Love being a big piece, but not maybe so much the landing spot. In this case, it's both. Like he's a first round pick and he has an opportunity week one to, have that job, have that lead role. So, yeah, no, I mean, perfect opportunity for him. I think he's going to get a lot of hype, which maybe could create some uncertainty of like where he's taken, but we'll have to let all that play out. But like is where things stand right now. Yeah. First round pick at the running back position and opportunity from day one to have a job starting job. So good outlook for Jadarian Price.
For sure. The third running back, the third round 26 pick, Kalen Black to the 49ers. They were reaching like crazy during this draft. This guy didn't get a combine invite and they spent a day two pick on him. I don't have much to say except this was a crazy reach and he will be purely a backup to Christian McCaffrey. I just even if he goes down, I almost think they would play somebody else. It's really hard for me to get behind this pick entirely. I don't know who their backup is otherwise. Is it still Isaac Guerendo? Might be, but
Yeah, I don't think so. I've seen some pictures of him in the offseason. He looks like bad.
bad.
So he's
Yeah.
put on
So
some weight. So I
to,
don't even know. But
honest, I'll take a look while Vinny talks. But yeah, I mean, unless he is the backup and McCaffrey were to go down, like fine. But it was such a reach.
mhm. Yeah, no, I do think like, that's kind of what the 49ers have done. Even when you think back to like Pearsall, that was a reach, and that hasn't really like fully panned out yet, but he's been solid. But I also just think anytime the 49ers draft a running back or have a running back on the roster, you're kind of like, oh, who's this guy? And just because of the like how they run the ball, obviously McCaffrey makes it look so much easier and better than anyone on their roster. But even when you think about like Jordan Mason, like they drafted him, and that kind of panned out well for a good part of the season. So it's definitely kind of probably a name you monitor through training camp, see what the role is going to be. But with McCaffrey's injury history, kind of year on, year off kind of trend he's been on, it's good to kind of have these guys in mind who, day two capital for running backs not horrible. Third round capital is not horrible. So name to kind of monitor, but as it stands right now, there's really no path for relevance next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: his backups or McCaffrey's backups are Jordan James, Isaac Guerendo, and Kalen Black. Who Kalen Black is already penciled in on ESPN as the third running back ahead of Guerendo. So if Kalen Black can't beat those guys out for the backup spot, I mean, write this guy off entirely because there's not a lot of competition for that backup spot. So I'll say that. Keep an eye in training camp. If he does win the backup role, he suddenly has more value just simply as McCaffrey's backup on the 49ers.
Yep.
The next running back off the board, the 4-8. So now we're in the day three running backs. And this was the fourth one off the board, and we're already in the fourth round. Jonah Coleman to Denver. Neither one of us wrote that we liked or didn't like this. I think there's a possibility somehow it works. This was also the Broncos' second pick of the draft, so it's less of we kind of look at the draft capital a little less in this regard, simply because it was the Broncos. I like Jonah Coleman, but it's a crowded room. There's R.J. Harvey, there's J.K. Dobbins. He kind of profiles more like a J.K. Dobbins, so we'll see. Keep an eye on training camp. Like he could come away and suddenly have value, but like off rip, it's kind of like it's muddy. It's not super exciting, and yeah, I wouldn't be excited to draft him anywhere.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these names are more so dynasty names. Like it just makes me think of like, this is where I've been in a dynasty league for 8 years, and it's just kind of I've learned to just throw darts on names like this in the third and fourth round because you see guys like Bucky Irving, Woody Marks, like even though they're Woody Marks not necessarily like blew up, it's still relevant to a person you could start in a lineup that you spent a fourth round rookie pick on. So I think these names are more relevant to that side of things. But yeah, I mean, again, a Denver running back, a Sean Payton running back is another one you kind of turn your head towards, like, oh, who's this guy? But we have to let things play out because there's two, not just like, McCaffrey obviously in front of Payne, but then there's two really good guys in front of Coleman here. So he's completely blocked. So I mean, stuff needs to happen. Injuries need to happen. Uh, we gotta let it play out. But
Yeah,
yeah.
could be a worse spot for Coleman himself. At the 422, this is my first one I don't like. Mike Washington Jr. to the Raiders. I simply don't like this because he will always be a backup, right? Coleman could work his way in and somehow look amazing and win the job. I don't think that would be out of the question. With Ashton Genty on the Raiders, I don't think Mike Washington will ever win that job, right? So, there's a lot of value as the backup, and could he get touches? Absolutely. But it'll never be enough to be fantasy relevant. I really don't think they do a full platoon as Kubiak always says he wants to. You have Ashton Genty. It's a totally different story. You spent what, the sixth overall pick last year on him. I think you have to use him as a bell cow. So I think it was just a tough landing spot for Mike Washington in order like he'll just never climb his way up. So that's why I put a minus there.
Yeah. No, not much more to add. I think, we'll definitely see Genty transition to that bell cow role. And even if he wasn't, this is, fifth round pick we're talking about where the likelihood of that pick turning out to be anything at the running back position specifically is super low to begin with. So yeah.
Yeah, all these day three running back, it's so much harder to like carve out anything. So like even if Coleman wins it, it's like, he's still a day three pick, so it's tough to do.
Yeah. Yep.
In the fifth round, the 21st pick, we're a little polarizing here actually. So Emmett Johnson to the Chiefs, I'm not in on it while Vinny is excited about this pick. So Vinny, why are you excited about this one?
So he's kind of a name I wish I talked about in our initial kind of preview episode because he was a name in the dynasty community that I like had heard. Like when you always hear these years out of like, oh, this is the Jeremiah Love class. This is like next year's the Jeremiah Smith class, and like then there's all these other names sprinkled in that like fall off, get bigger, like Mendoza, Gentry, who kind of come out of nowhere, and they're the guys all of a sudden. Um, and he was a name that's talked about, and he almost put up 2,000 all-purpose yards at Nebraska last season. And I also kind of like the landing spot. I think Pacheco, just went to the Lions. There's an opening at the position. Obviously, Kenneth Walker's there. Not, I shouldn't say opening because that's Kenneth Walker's job. Should have a monster year. Um, but he does kind of have that shaky injury history that was a problem in Seattle and kind of a problem for fantasy overall that just never really got him going and never really got to see that version consistently that we saw in this playoff run. So I think in terms of like the Chiefs have commented like they were shocked this guy was available for them. I don't think you could read too much into that because, of course, teams are like, "Oh, we like the guy we drafted." They're not going to just trash him. But I do think, like all things considered, they fell down their board to in a spot where they were shocked for him to be there. Good college career, kind of a name I've heard about in the dynasty community. and the landing spot feels okay. So, not that I'm in love with this pick. I think he's going to like ascend and be this top name, but I just think there could be something there.
Yeah, I think it's funny too because this is one I don't like simply because he can't win the job. It's Ken Walker's job. And
Yeah, yeah.
that's why he's purely a backup. But you mentioned the injury history, like maybe, but I don't want to bank on injury. And Ken Walker just got paid a ton of money, so he will
Mhm.
be the guy. Three down workhorse in my opinion. I think he's maybe like occasional touches here and there type guy. I mean, they signed Amari DiMercato too, who's a
Mhm.
capable pass catcher. I just don't know if it's like he is going to get pure backup work and it's going to be just the two of them on the field, Ken Walker and him. So I think it's just tough. He can't win the job. So I think that's why I put him as a minus. But you'll notice too, as we talk about a lot of these running back names, they're all landing in either good opportunity spots or really good offenses. Like we
Mhm.
land in the Chiefs, Jonah Coleman in Denver, Mike Washington in Vegas, who, it's not the worst in the world. Um, Kalen Black, San Fran, they're a great offense. Jeremiah Love, Arizona, that's a good offense. Jadarian Price, Seattle, good offense. This
Yeah.
next guy up, not a good offense at the 525. Nicholas Singleton to Tennessee. But I almost put this as a plus because the opportunity is there. Granted, I don't like the draft capital, but the opportunity is there. Pollard and Spears are on expiring contracts, so Singleton could be the guy here. I think it's a solid spot, and I think we both kind of like the Titans as an ascending team this year, so could be exciting. I think there's just a chance he wins it, and if he does, all of a sudden we're talking up. This could be a really exciting spot, a really exciting player to draft. As for now, it feels very much like just wait and see. Day three capital could absolutely be nothing. Um, but if we hear a lot of buzz during training camp, I'd be really excited about this guy.
No, and I know obviously this is a redraft focused podcast, but like I mentioned, just with these names specifically, it is more dynasty oriented. Like we're not going to see a lot of these guys in redraft. We won't see any of these guys in redraft unless there's major injuries. Um, but again, Nick Singleton was a big name in dynasty, like in that sort of Jeremiah Love tier, where like not of course better than Jeremiah Love, but kind of like this guy's going to be a first rounder. Like he could be, you know, big time impact year one, and he kind of fell off as the year went on, and now here we are in the fifth round going to the Titans. So it reminds me a little bit of Ollie Gordon. Like I know he had a big profile last year, went to the Dolphins and sort of had a little bit of a role, but I don't know. I think, like you mentioned, the opportunity could be there based on just the room itself on paper. But again, we have to see things play out. But he out of these all names we've talked about so far, since Price and Love, he is kind of one of the first name. It's like I would keep an eye on this guy, like you mentioned.
Yeah, for Dynasty, I would not mind him as the RB3 after Love and Price.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
At the 534, a pick by the Ravens owner himself, Adam Randall. I think this is an exciting player. Again, good offense. He'll be purely a backup, but we got to consider Derrick Henry potentially the wheels are going to fall off or he'll retire at some point soon. So, I doubt it ever pans out where he is the guy and like the only guy and he's the starter far and away. But it's just a name to talk about. Adam Randall was a wide receiver converted to running back, and sometimes it works for a year or two. So I think this year he's purely a backup. But again, another good offense for one of these running backs. So just a name to think about if for whatever reason in a year or two, he's probably more exciting for Dynasty. Let's just put it that way.
But yeah, I agree. I think it's also just funny. Like every year, I feel like we talk about is this it for Derrick Henry, and then he goes out and has 2,000 yards. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, another dynasty name to watch. I feel like. Other than that, I like your point about the good offenses. I didn't even really like notice that like all these running backs are a part of good offenses. So I think that's a good sign. Like we always harp on draft guys in good offenses in terms of like opportunity, of course, but that seems to be the case, like you pointed out.
Especially running backs, and
Yeah.
especially in a class that's so terrible.
Yeah.
We have two more. The 6'6" Katron Allen to the Commanders. He was Nick Singleton's kind of co-running back in Penn State. Um, it's fine. I think people are talking about Katron Allen potentially winning the job. I kind of doubt it. I think, they still have Bill Krosky, Rashad White. They bring in Rashad White. They bring in Jerome Ford. I just think it's one of those crowd situations. Somebody's getting cut probably, but Katron Allen, 6th round pick now we're talking. I'm just not. I just don't buy that he'll get the start. So he's not a name I'm looking out for really.
Yeah, the only thing I have to add about this pick is it just makes me wish even more that Jeremiah Love went to the Commanders. Because if we're talking about a sixth rounder potentially winning the job, imagine what Jeremiah Love would have done in that team, in that offense too. So it is what it is. But yeah, again, just kind of wait and see of how things pan out in training camp.
For sure. And then last name at the 617, Damon Claiborne, who I forget where he went, but he ends up in Minnesota. Um, Fine. We knew Minnesota was taking somebody. Like we knew it. They were bringing a lot of guys for draft visits. Um, 6th rounder though, and he is behind Mason and Aaron Jones still. Again, he could carve out a role. A lot of these guys could carve out something, but I don't think any of them besides Love and Price are really exciting for redraft unless we start to hear something crazy of like, oh, Nick Singleton won the job in training camp. So just a name to keep an eye on though. Like all these names for Dynasty are pretty intriguing at the end of the day when you really consider it, especially in such a weak draft class overall. It will be fun to talk about these guys if you're thinking about Dynasty. But overall, for redraft, not too much to get excited about, except the fact that a lot of them are in good offenses or have a potential opportunity.
And one more thing to point out, I mean, these could be names we see start popping up in season next year, like in terms of waiver wire, as injuries start to become more prominent in terms of affecting offenses, opportunity, stuff like that. So, I mean, don't write these guys off completely. I think in terms of your day one draft of where you're drafting your team for the year, these besides like you mentioned, Price and Love, these guys won't be relevant, but I could would put a lot of money that a few of these names pop up on the waiver wire as the season continues. So don't just keep them in mind.
Yeah, I mean, and consider Adam Randall too as a pass catching option. Derrick Henry doesn't really do that. So you never know. I think there's a reason we're bringing up these names. No, it's not a good class. A lot of these landing spots for a lot of these players in general have not been good, but some of these landing spots for the running backs ended up being a lot better. Aside from draft capital, they ended up being a lot better than what could have been. So
Yeah.
something to consider. But yeah, we're running pretty long on this episode at this point. We do have probably a longer one next week because we have 21 wide receivers to get through plus the tight ends. So we will end up doing that for y'all next week. That'll be a fun episode. I think the wide receivers are by far and away the most interesting position to talk about from this draft. So that'll be fun. A lot of depth, a lot of day one and two receivers as well, which is sweet. The tight ends, we'll talk. We'll talk about them.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting there, to be completely honest. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the quarterbacks, running backs, we had two total that we mentioned on last week's episode. Mendoza, we wanted him there. Granted, we knew it. Jadarian Price was another one. You said you were hoping he'd go there, just opportunity. He landed there, and the draft capital says a lot too. So great landing spot. But yeah, we're excited about those two. We also had one for each of the wide receivers and tight end positions. So there's a lot of excitement to go around the board, and that will be quite a fun episode. We'll try and keep some names much briefer than we did today, but we had less names today total than we do wide receivers alone. So
Wow. Wow.
we'll have to figure it out how to shorten the length of our discussion.
And
But
I know we need to wrap it, but this does, as we're kind of talking about how weak this class is, this does kind of excite me for the hot takes episode. Like I
oh
think we could get real hot, like we could get boiling hot just because of how weak it is. We could be like Nick Singleton's going to be an RB2, like I mean that's not realistic, but I think there's some opportunity to be like put your stamp on a guy and be like I think this guy could be something.
Yeah, last year was a lot more cut and dry, it felt. And it
Exactly.
was a little tough for us. Like, I think we had. Here, let me pull it up real quick. Now, I'm just curious. Not that it matters for this episode in general. But, if we're looking at some of these, like, I mean, it was all like big names, like you had Genty, Hampton, and Travis Hunter as the three guys you used for a hot take. I had
Yeah.
Harvey, Dart, and I talked tight ends generically. So I think overall, like we could get really spicy with some of these
Yeah.
takes. I think that's a great shout. That'll be a fun episode. But we got the wide receivers and tight ends coming to you first, and then we'll probably do that hot takes episode after that. But yeah, we're looking forward to the wide receivers. Tight ends will be probably a breeze through because there's not much to talk about there. But, we'll make sure we talk about them too. We can't leave them high and dry. But yeah, fun episode. A lot more exciting than I originally thought now that we've talked it out. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
There'll be some guys.
Yeah. All right. See y'all in the next episode.
Peace.